Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the iWorkinSport live interview. As you know, this is the show where we talk to accomplished sport business professionals who come here to share their knowledge, experience, tips, and advice in order to help you succeed in your career. If we're just meeting, my name is João Fugerio. I'm the founder of iWorkinSport, and it is a pleasure to have you here with us. So thank you for being here. And if you're coming back, I don't need to introduce myself. We know each other. It's good to see you too. For those that are coming back, let me know if this is your first time. Just write in the comments. And actually, for everybody that is watching us, it's really good to know where you're watching from. So you can write that in the comments as well. That would be great. Also, if you're not watching it live, if you're watching the replay, write in the comments. Let us know what you thought of the show and also where you connected from. Now, if you don't know iWorkinSport, we're a platform to help you accelerate your career in sport. If you want to work in sport, or if you already work in sport, we're here to help you either way. So we organize events which connect you with recruiters in case you're looking for a job, or with academic programs if you're interested in investing in education. These programs can be a very effective way to enter the industry, right? So if you already know us, you're coming back, if you can hit that like button, if you're watching that on YouTube, that is great, help us. If you're new here, wait a little, see if you like it, stay, hang out a little with us. And then if you do, please hit the like button. Now, let me introduce you to my guest today. So Court Jeske is a good friend, but that's not why he is here today. Well, not only anyway, he's here because he has an inspiring career in sport with a lot of knowledge to share with all of us. He has over 20 years of experience in the sports industry. He's currently at the United Soccer League as a chief commercial officer. Well, I'll let him tell us a bit more about his career in a second. As I told you, it's quite long. And I'm just going to mention that before actually going to the USL, he was a shareholder and the CEO at the Nashville Soccer Club, right? And was instrumental to take that franchise to the MLS. He'll tell us a little bit about that. MLS is also a place where he stayed or spent a good time of good part of his career. When he left, he was the vice president of international business. So you can see he has a lot to tell us about his career. And finally, we're also going to talk about the World Cup is upon us after the World Cup in Qatar. That is within a few days, really a few weeks. That will move to the USA, to Mexico and Canada. So I think it's a great time for us to learn about the opportunities that are being created around soccer in the United States too. Right, so I can't wait to talk about all that. I'm going to invite Court to join me right after this. Hello, Court. How are you?
João, I'm well. Thank you for having me on the show.
Now, that's great to see you, man. Whereabouts are you now?
So not as quiet of a place as you're at, so I'd like to apologize to anyone before. I'm actually sitting in one of those restaurant bubbles that is a relic
You're
of
in
the
New York.
pandemic. In New York, in Madison Square Park, as I've got a meeting here in at the top of the hour. So, but hopefully you guys can hear me well, and thank you so much for having me on the show, and I look forward to talking to you in the audience.
Great. Yeah, by the way, I will invite the audience to, as I said, tell us where they're watching from. Erica is saying hi here from Lausanne. you guys can also post here where you're at. But of course, so you are actually based in Tampa, right? Is that California?
Close. So the United Soccer League's headquarters is in Tampa, Florida. We have about 100 employees there that drive the business of soccer, men's and women's, professional amateur soccer forward in the U.S. there. I spend most of my time just outside of New York City, in Summit, New Jersey, and New York City with meetings. Leading the commercial team, there's a great need for a presence here in New York, where media sponsors, you name it, are headquartered from a U.S. perspective.
That's great. I didn't know. I thought you were down there in Florida as well. So before we talk about the USL, I think there's a lot for us to learn about it. Can we start with a summary of your career? Maybe what you studied, how you got to working in sport?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to give a 2-minute summary. And the first thing I would say is I've been extremely privileged and fortunate to spend over 20 years in sports. And what I've found over the years is that one opportunity has generally led to another one based on either the work that I've done or the connections that I have forged, and built a tremendous amount of friendships across the globe through it. So I started, I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is a city of 1 million people in the middle of the United States, not close to either coast. Worked in college sports, which is very big here in the United States. College football and college basketball, that's American football. Very, very big businesses. And that led me to some jobs with some MLS clubs, ultimately the US Soccer Federation, where I had the opportunity to do everything as glamorous as ice down drinks and fill up water bottles and put flyers up in bars for the men's and women's national team in 2002 and 2003, as we were truly building the sport in this country on the back of a successful men's World Cup that had just taken place in Korea and Japan, and the ability to host a women's World Cup.
When was that? 2003. Okay. Continue, please.
Yeah, after that, those connections and those people led me to the FIFA Master Program, which probably some of you are familiar with, and alumnus along with Zhao here and others. Truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience to build a network, grow personally, and take a lot of experiences back to the United States, where I continued my career in rugby after that year was over. Never thought I would work in rugby, but spent 4 years at the United States Rugby Football Union, handling their events, marketing, ticket sales, sponsorship, you name it. And it was a challenging role that I tell people all the time. I learned more in those 4 years at a very small federation and opportunity than I did in many other positions I was in, because in a small organization, oftentimes you get a chance to do more. Right. And so that time there led me back to a friend of mine, Michael Gandler, who's now the Chief Revenue Officer for Legends in Europe. Yeah. Very close friend from grad school, was working at Major League Soccer, and said, you should come interview for this job at Major League Soccer. And so I did, and lo and behold, I took a job as the Director of International Business for Major League Soccer, which it included export business, like what kind of MLS brand are we taking to Europe and the rest of the world? And then what kind of import business do we have in our relationships with CONCACAF, with FIFA, with Manchester United or Atletico Madrid or Club America as they tour in the United States. So it was a very interesting role that I had for almost a decade. And MLS went through a lot of changes in that time, very positive changes in the leadership of Commissioner Garber, Kathy Carter, who was my boss, Will Wilson, and some others. But ultimately, I came to an opportunity that I couldn't pass up, Zhao, which was the chance to start your own club, help pick the colors, help pick the coach, and do that with a really fun group of investors and founders. And that's what we did in Nashville SC. So I got the chance to pick up my family, move from the New York City area to Nashville, Tennessee, a great city in the United States, one that's on the rise. Built that club up, got the club experience, which was so vital and lacking in my career, having spent a lot of time at federations, at unions, at MLS league office. It really thrust us into a good position. And so we built Nashville SC. I was the first full-time employee. And then we really built it up to an organization with close to 70 people that was very attractive for MLS. And as most people on this chat know, because you're involved in the sports industry and you're interested in it, there's no promotion and relegation in the United States from a competitive standpoint, but we do have it from an economic standpoint. And so there was a fantastic partner in Mr. John Ingram in Nashville, who was the principal owner, that wanted to take the Nashville SC brand to MLS. And we worked together to do that. And there was a lot of people involved that helped facilitate that process. And I was just happy to be a part of it and do my part. At the end of that journey, I had an experience in USL, which is the second, third, and fourth divisions in the United States, and really seeing the opportunity there. And it is the last frontier, I would say, in soccer in North America as we grow. And so had the fortune to join the league office in 2019, where our CEO, Alec Papadakis, our president, Jake Edwards, who is British. I should mention Alec, also his son, Justin, our COO. They are Greek Americans that also lived in Canada. So we have a very international organization, which we love, but really get to spend every day trying to build soccer for our clubs and our communities, and build it in a different way, in a different brand than fans may be familiar with what they know from Europe, what they know from Latin America, or what they know from MLS. So that's where we are today. And again, I just go back and say that I've been really blessed in this journey, and I've loved every minute of working in sports for the last 21 years.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for that summary, Court. Let's continue now, since you are at the USL, and you already mentioned that it's a sort of second division, second, third, and fourth sort of division in the US. Internationally, people may they say that it is a second division, but the United States has a different sort of landscape. There's no relegation promotion, for instance, between the USL to the MLS, or I'm not even sure between the divisions within MLS. So can you please paint a picture for our international audience about the USL? What if I said MLS before I meant USL?
Yeah, no problem. Listen, we are different here in North America, and I should be cognizant. It's not just the U.S., but the U.S. and Canada both have very different very different soccer structures than the rest of the world. I shouldn't say the rest of the world. Most of the world is accustomed to. As you said, Zhao, we do not have promotion relegation between the first and second division, but I want to characterize that and remind the audience that there are 26 first division clubs in the United States, 26 MLS clubs for 330 million people. It's an extreme, it's a country of extreme size, sporting intelligence, and also a love for sports, right? So many of our clubs are in places like Phoenix, San Diego, San Antonio, Tampa, Las Vegas, globally known cities where USL and the USL brand of soccer is the highest level of soccer that they can watch locally, and there's no chance for that to change. So what we really focus on is not the fact that we don't have promotion and relegation, but making sure our competition, excuse me, is intriguing in its own way. Maybe it's a little bit different looking than MLS or Liga MX or Ligue 1 in France. We like to be a little bit creative because we're younger. But I think when I'm asked often in the media here, will we ever have promotion relegation? My answer is we don't need it. Again, you look at the U.S. or look at the U.S. and Canada, there's 360 million people with more buying power than Europe. MLS will continue to be extremely successful. And we should all be very proud of the growth that they've had, those of us that have had the chance to contribute. But stopping at 30 or 32 franchises doesn't satisfy the need for men's professional soccer on this continent. It also doesn't satisfy the need and desire for women's professional soccer.
That's right.
And on the same front, the NWSL does a fantastic job, but with a very small number of clubs. We think about how do we make sure that the map is covered with soccer and that we can deliver on that proposition that all 360 million people here, from the amateur fun age groups all the way up to the elite pro, can take part.
Well, that's great. And I imagine that the World Cup will play a role in helping that development. I'm going to ask you about that in a second. I want to just give a shout out to people that are actually saying hi here. So we have Elaine Lemos in Chicago, a friend of ours. Travis Cutler in New Jersey. We have Abby in Dubai. Who else? Philip is saying hello, João and Court. He's from Accra, speaking that is Ghana, if I'm not wrong. And we have Jesus Lorenzo Gomez in Rennes, France. I told you that we were quite international. So some other people saying hello
fantastic.
Here. Omar in Kuala Lumpur. Who else is here? Attila Mascarenhas in Belo Horizonte, Brazil. So I think we went across the world already. Asia, Africa, South America, US. So, by the way, I want to tell everyone there, prepare your questions, right? This is people who are coming back. They know this is interactive. I do prepare my own questions here, but they have preference, Court. So, when questions come, I'll pass also to them. We were talking about the impact that the World Cup going to the United States, Mexico, and Canada, so the United World Cup, will have in soccer in the US. So can you maybe expand on that and also talk about the impact on USL's development?
Sure thing. We've got our friends on here from the Federation, so they can correct me if I'm wrong with anything. But listen, 2026 will be the world's largest sporting event ever, period. The number of clubs, the size of the stadiums, the fact it's across 3 fantastic countries, and a tri-cultural dynamic that has not been seen for some time in an event of this size. FIFA's thrown out some very, very audacious numbers, but I can tell you it will be something special, and we're looking forward to hosting here. What does it mean for USL? What does it mean for the soccer ecosystem that's here? Look, I'll tell you this, and I can be a little bit self-critical of us. At some level, it's time to get going. The 3 host countries have known now for longer than we have until the event itself that we're going to be hosting this tournament. And then we're going to have this massive, massive event. And I can't really point to anything that the CSA, US Soccer, or the FMF have done with specificity to 26. Now that's okay, right? Part of that tells me what it is incumbent upon leagues like the USL, MLS, Canadian Premier League, Liga MX. They need to figure out their own strategies because this is a massive event. Youth, state associations in the United States, all the way down to the under 2s, right? They need to figure out how they're going to take this massive, massive event that it belongs to everyone and grow their own brand of soccer, their own style, their own level, whatever it might be. So I look at it as though the event is coming. And what we have to do is make sure that across our nearly 200 amateur clubs, the elite amateur division in the United States, and our 36 professional men and soon to be professional women as well, in a lot of markets, we need to go figure out how we're going to take the bull by the horns, as we say. I think that's maybe an American saying, maybe a British, maybe a Spanish one. I don't know.
We get it.
We need to figure that out. And with respect to the federation, with the FIFA, all their eyes are on Qatar right now. Let's make no illusion that there's not a very important event in front of us next month. So I look at it as a two-way street, and we at the USL are not going to sit around any longer and just say, well, I wonder what's going to be afforded us. We need to figure that out, and we need to have a plan. And so that's what we're going through right now, that process. But I'll tell you this, Zhao, I think what's really, really important for any host country of any event, especially mega ones like a Rugby World Cup, FIFA World Cup, Olympics, you name it, the host country, the host region it's not about figuring out how to have an impact in the actual city, right? It's about how does the rest of the country feel like they're a part of it. So I had the fortune of sitting with our U.S. soccer president, Cindy Parlow-Cohn, at our Open Cup final. And we were talking about this, about in the 11 cities in the U.S. hosting matches, it's a lot easier. It's about the rest of the country to make them feel engaged and empowered, right, and effective. Like Zhao and many on this call, you're familiar with Rio in 2016. Rio felt it, but how did they feel it in Belo Horizonte or Sao Paulo, right? Or Manaus or wherever? Like that extension is hard. That's the harder question that I think host countries and regions have to make sure they're thinking about. It's not the fan fest in the main city. That's all there. It's everyone else feeling connected.
Right. Now talking about your role at the USL. So whenever I ask this question, I told Ana Maria last week, normally I have always the same start. But if I ask you, what's a normal day for you?
Well, a normal day is divided two ways. I have normal days here in the tri-state area, where I'm between my home in Summit, New Jersey and New York City, and then also normal days on the road that include our HQ in Tampa. And quite frankly, Zhao, I spend a lot of time on the road visiting our communities and visiting ownership groups in Texas, California, Florida, Indiana, you name it, to make sure that we have a really firm understanding of what's happening at the local level. And there's some really great things going on. But at the end of the day, what we focus on, and there is a lot of business and there is a lot of negotiation. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of echo. There's negotiation, there's contracts, there's all those elements of sports business. At the end of the day, we realized if we have clubs that are hyper local and focus on impacting their community in a positive way, they're going to be really successful. So a lot of my days are focused on making sure that clubs, ownership groups, players, presidents, fans are just trying to be the best version of themselves, right? I'll use a saying that I had in Nashville, which people would always ask me, well, what is this? It's USL. There's no promotion relegation. What's happening in soccer? And I said, look, there's Nashville SC, the same way, and that's our soccer club. The same way Manchester has Manchester United and Manchester City, and Munich has Bayern, and Barcelona has FC Barcelona. And people would kind of snicker a little bit and be like, well, these are these big global brands. And I would just say, look, but we're 125 years behind. And with the support of the community, we can catch up really quick. And that goes for any club around the world. I feel like if they focus on being good locally, then they can be really good regionally, nationally, internationally. So I'll borrow a saying from one of my friends that you got to be good somewhere before you try to be good everywhere.
Right. Yeah,
that was a long-winded answer. So hopefully it goes back to what a normal day was, but it's something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a lot, so especially the relationships with the members. I mean, with the clubs, and what about other sort of commercial stakeholders? How much are you actually talking to them? I suppose that's a big part of your job is actually selling that, well, or at least quote unquote selling that to potential partners. What's the elevator pitch for them? The USL. Listen, you're a brand, come to partner with us.
Yeah, listen. The elevator pitch is this: that soccer is growing faster than any sport in this continent. Right? It's already, there's a tremendous amount of passion. I don't know if you have anyone from Mexico, but Mexico got the soccer bug a long time ago. Yeah. But in the U.S. and Canada, it is exploding in a way I couldn't have imagined 20 years ago. If you don't get in on the elevator floor, to use your analogy, you're going to miss the boat, and you're going to miss an opportunity to be a part of something that is a truly growth industry. Like other countries around the world, Australia, England, you name it, we like a lot of different sports here.
Yeah.
But what you can see is that younger fans are playing and following the sport with more avidity than they ever had. Right? So before, it used to be the World Cup came around every 4 years on the men's side. The women's side started to grow. Then you layer in MLS, then you layer in USL and WSL, etc. Now there's avenues to follow the sport every day that aren't just the FC Barcelona game at 9 a.m. in the morning, right? You can be you can be active. Your kids can play for an academy in your local community. And so we think that that fact, and it's not just me saying it, I think ESPN did a poll a couple years ago, and they found that American football was number one, but second most favorite sport in 12 to 34-year-olds, a broad spectrum of young people, was soccer. It was soccer. And so as those people age, mature, and become fans, experience a 26 World Cup, maybe experience a 2027 or 2031 Women's World Cup, we have a real strong chance to make sure they're a part of that movement. So that's the elevator pitch: is get on now, or else you're going to miss it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Of course, there's a few more comments and already questions here coming from the audience. So I'm just going to give a shout out to, there's a bunch from Brazil. Mamé Paulo from Brazil, a special guest. Regina as well. There is Rubens, also from Brazil. So I think I closed the Brazilian audience for the moment. And there's Adil here, I think is in Trinidad Tobago, if I'm not wrong, right? Says, nice seeing you both again. Haven't seen Court since his FIFA Master 22 lecture with us in Milan. And there's here a question by Travis. To what extent do you think new stadium builds and surrounding infrastructure will help drive economic growth in USL cities?
Well, Travis, it's a smart question, and you've probably seen this the way you ask it. But look, having a stadium and having a home for a club, not just a stadium, but a training complex, a locker room, that what we call brick and mortar investment, it just changes the game of what a club can be and how the community sees those clubs. Look, that's why 3 or 4 years ago, some of my colleagues had the foresight to set up a real estate division where we focus on helping ownership groups, helping communities build stadiums across the country. It's why we partnered with a group like Legends on not just helping us go to the marketplace for sponsorship and partnerships, but they're intimately involved at every level of the USL business intersection. And for those of you that don't know, Legends are a massive investment group that was founded by the Dallas Cowboys and New York Yankees, two teams that in a North American perspective certainly know about cultivating brands and building fan bases, right? So they're very excited about soccer, and they're excited to get in on the stadium boom.
Right. Thank you, Court. There's more questions coming up. As I said, I'm going to pass it to the audience real quick. So Ahmed says hi from Kuala Lumpur. Hello, good to see you, man. We start with Philip. He's asking, Court, is the USL open to commercial partnership opportunities in Africa? What are some of the steps?
Yeah, thanks, Philip. We are. I would say we're open for business across the globe. And the reason we partner with a group like Sport 5, which many of you may know, global media group, used to be called Lagardère. It was a French-based group, is because there's an appetite for USL soccer around the globe. So the answer is yes, but being very honest and direct, Philip, it would matter how. Like what is the symbiotic relationship? About 3 or 4 months ago, and I see a lot of CONCACAF people on here, which I love. 3 or 4 months ago, we announced a partnership with the Caribbean Football Union. Fellow alumnus, Kamara David, who's the general secretary, amazing guy from TNT, and the CONCACAF president, came to the USL HQ in Tampa. We sat down, we figured out how can we help you and how can you guys help us? And what they could do for us is deliver some of the best players in the region. That they were looking to find homes for Caribbean players in the USL because of the growing standard of play. What can we get from them? Well, more players in the league. We ended up with 2 media deals, ESPN International in the Caribbean, as well as Flow, which is a very important media partner in that region. Opportunities. What I get weary of is simply a press release for the sake of partnership, and then nothing happens. Right? You got to make sure there's something there, that the goal line is right there, that you can get a few things done right out of the gate.
For sure. Court, there's, I think, a lot of interest here in the USL business. I will come back to the questions in a minute to the audience. Keep them coming. But I do have actually some questions to you, I think, concerning more career orientation and advice, right? So if you talk about your own career, how you developed, what you think were the skills that you have that's allowed you to thrive in a sports business management career?
Yeah. And listen, Zhao and everyone out there, it's a different me now than it was 20 years ago, right? And so the first thing I would say is you always have to be assessing your situation and thinking about not only the short term, but what's good long term, right? And what are the experiences you need? I like to play golf when I can. How can you put more clubs in your bag so you've got more tools there? But I would say if you think about your career, I always advise people of 2 things. One, you have to work hard, and that is somewhat trite to say, but you have to be curious. So you have to be curious not only about your job and what's in front of you, but you need to be on things like iWorkinSport. You need to be engaging with people outside of your immediate realm. You have to always have a thirst to want to learn more. And the second thing I said, tell people that are trying to get into the career is you're always leaving an impression.
You're always sorry?
You're always leaving an impression, right? You're giving off an essence. And so every single person that you work with and engage with will leave and have an opinion about Zhao, right? And that can be very, very important down the road. Let me just tell you a quick story. My boss at my university that I worked for 3 years called the person in Kansas City for the Kansas City Chiefs of the NFL and Kansas City Wizards of MLS to say, hey, you should put this guy at the top of your list for this job he applied for. Give him an interview. That's all he needs.
Yeah.
The general manager of the Kansas City Wizards 20 years ago referred me to someone at US Soccer that hired me. 20 years later, that general manager is now the president of the North Carolina FC and the Carolina Courage, USL and NWSL teams. Excuse me. And I interact with them once a week. Like, could you imagine if we had had a bad impression or a difficult dynamic?
Yeah.
It is it's cliche to say, but it's a very small world.
Definitely a good one. So pay attention to the impression that you leave and be curious. Um, I presume that you're involved in recruitment occasionally. I mean, to your team within the organization. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. As I said, we have close to 100 people. Zhao, we are rapidly growing. When I started in 2019, that was about 50 people. So we've doubled in size over the last 4 years, even through the pandemic. Our leadership felt it was a good chance to double down on our growth. So yeah, we're always looking for young, dynamic people. They have to have the ability to work in the U.S. We are a U.S.-based company. But as we grow, I'm sure down the road, 5-10 years, we're going to have international offices, satellites, you name it, as the USL brand grows and expands.
Apart from someone being curious, as you mentioned that was important, are there some skill traits that you normally look for in candidates to work with you?
For sure. I think passion is one, and I don't want to confuse passion with fandom. As many of you guys on this call work in this industry, we all get the letter saying, Messi is my favorite player, and if one day I get the chance to work for FC Barcelona, that would be my dream job. That's fandom, right? Passion is, I've followed your career as a general manager. I don't do that, but I'm saying, an example. Or I did some reading on the new partnership you have with Twitter, and I see that it provides X, Y, and Z benefits. So I look, and it kind of goes back to being curious, right? I look for people that are passionate and curious, but then also people that have a lot of attention to detail. When you get a lot of people together that have attention to detail, you can really move an organization forward.
Yeah.
Because communication is clear, things aren't missed, and you have a tremendous opportunity just to coalesce on things and get big projects achieved.
Brilliant. What I like about this is that's a good answer for people that are maybe applying for jobs, but also in our positions when we're looking for talent to say, oh, yeah, we should actually pay attention to that as well. So it works both ways. I'm going to go back here to some questions from the audience. Adil says that's great statement about hollow press releases. That's definitely not worthwhile. He had another question back up there. I'll go back to you, Adil, later. Elaine asks, Court, what are some of the commercial strategies you're working on towards USL W League to take it to the next level? Good to see you both. Good to see you, Elaine.
Thanks, Elaine. So I think the first thing we've done is try to increase our footprint, right? Any kind of commercial strategy goes with scale, right? The NFL and the EPL have one commercial strategy. The third division of Italy has a different one, right? Because of scale. So in year one with the W League, we had 44 clubs out of the gate. We had some amazing success stories. I saw someone mention they were from Minneapolis. Almost 6,000 people a game going to watch Minnesota Aurora compete and move through a title run. And they built a fantastic brand that embraced the community. Next year, this league of 44 will probably grow to close to 60 or 70. So in 2 short years, we've expanded the footprint of the highest quality and most elite amateur division in the United States. And I think, Elaine, the other key thing is we made it sustainable, right? Not just in the U.S., but clubs around the world. We know sports is hard. And oftentimes the focus is on Barcelona and the NBA and the Dallas Cowboys. But there are a lot of professional clubs around the globe that are struggling to survive economically. So if we had a league where we started with 44 clubs and 10 or 20 of them didn't last past the season, that's not going to be very healthy. You're going to be focused on churn. So we really look at keeping costs low, the fan experience high, being extremely prudent about the player cost. And even when you don't pay players and it's amateur, there's still significant cost. I ran a Nashville SC when they were a League Two team. That's an amateur division in the United States. We still spent about $350,000 that year as an amateur club playing all local games on buses, right? So it still requires investors and people that believe in the sport and believe in the upside of it. So Elaine, to finally answer your question, after we focus on this sustainable growth, then we turn with our friends at Legends, our friends at broadcast companies, you name it, to, hey, wouldn't this be an amazing brand of women's soccer to have access to and to showcase? And the reality is, if you're the most elite amateur division in the United States, you've probably got one of the top 5-8 talent pools in the world, just because of our college situation. And we have so many international players come here for college and then go back to their home countries and compete in Olympics, World Cups, Youth Cups, etc. So we got to grow the scale first. That's the focus. And then years 2, 3, and 4 are going to be about commercialization. Commercialization is happening now, though. Our friends at Puma have stood by the W League since its founding and provided gear, equipment, branding, promotion, because Puma says, hey, in North America, we're a challenger brand. We're not Nike. We're not Adidas. But we see USL as a challenger brand, so we want to align with you. So we love people like that are willing to help.
That's great. That's great. I just want to mention here again, I put on the screen while we were talking, because you mentioned the comments about Minnesota. That was from Fawes Kediri, saying that he was in Minnesota 3 years ago and was surprised by the fan base of soccer and the important investments going on to the sport. That's great. Court, so you did the FIFA Masters, same course that I did. Also, we have a few friends that did the same program participating here today as well. But I mean, there's several other programs, very good ones that we work with as well. I wanted to ask you, what's the importance of formal education? Maybe how important that was for you, maybe personally, but also when you're recruiting or when you're maybe giving advice to people. What do you think it's the importance of that?
Listen, Jean, I would say that education is important. Now, it can come in the forms of the FIFA Master or my undergraduate degree at the University of Oklahoma, where I studied business, right? Because I thought business would better prepare me for the business of sport. But I have to say, I'm almost 20 years an alumni now, alumnus. The connections and the learnings outside of the classroom were equally as valuable. And I know today that if I needed to tap on the shoulder of another alum, whether I knew them well or not, 9 times out of 10, they're going to answer the phone, text me back, try to help me solve any problem that I may have on the day. So that network and that experience is vital. But no doubt, knowledge is power. It's cliche to say, but knowledge is power. And I encourage people, however, or in whatever method you may want to continue to be curious and study and learn, to do it. I read every night before I go to bed. I try. I usually follow
formal education, but then I mentioned formal education, but super good way to learn as well is with informal one, whatever sort of you read or classes that you follow sort of online. Well, interviews like this I think can be quite helpful in some way. Listen,
hopefully they find someone a little bit more helpful than myself here.
Not at all, my friend. I'm learning a lot from you. Listen, there is a good question here from Fawaz as well. So it says the approach and business model of US sports is different than the European one. We talked about it. In Europe, they are trying to duplicate the US model on how to operate clubs and leagues as businesses. On the other hand, do you think that the US can take from the European sport approach, especially in football? Or what do you think the US can take from the European sport approach?
That's a great question. And there certainly is a tremendous cross-pollination of ideas that I think has never happened before. I read Front Office Sports every morning. It's a free, 4 or 5 articles in your inbox. So I don't think there was a tremendous amount of seriousness in his response, but the commissioner of the NBA, Adam Silver, said that they've actually looked at promotion relegation with their reserve teams. Now, there's not a lot of feasibility there, but if I was to answer your question, I've come to believe that promotion relegation has a tremendous value to equalize communities and equalize opportunity, where we get a lot of things right in the U.S. with our franchise model. But again, with that franchise model, you limit the potential and you limit the number of markets that you can hit. It's why, my personal belief is a Super League in Europe might have some financial advantages, but I do think it wouldn't be great for the sport overall. Because all of a sudden, in places like Switzerland, why do you need club teams, right? Why do you need a team? Why do you need Zamex Neuchâtel? Or why do you need Young Boys or any of the clubs around the world? It's a real danger. So I think there's something to be learned both ways. Again, going back to that cross-pollination in terms of equality, fairness approach. And then certainly I think where U.S. does have a leg up is a bit on the sustainability and the entertainment value as well. I'm always shocked when I go to a game and match in Europe and you can't buy a beer, you can't buy food properly, you can't do this. I mean, then you go to some of the stadiums here, you don't even know there's a game going on because there's so much other stuff happening, right? So I think it works both ways. And I think 26 will be a catalyst for just more of those interactions, and more understanding both directions.
Yeah, I think I just put this on the screen because Ahmed was kind of following up exactly on that. So do you think that the World Cup 2026 he was asking specifically if it will boost the shift from European model to North America model on global perspective, or maybe not necessarily?
I don't think so. I mean, again, Ahmed, this is my opinion. I think what it probably does is sheds a little bit more light and understanding on each model. And I don't think there's a right or wrong. There's just differences. What I can say about USL is we are looking at very earnestly, and this has been in the media, so there's no surprise here, but we have looked at promotion relegation and what would that mean and how would it affect the over 200 clubs that we have in our ecosystem. How would it work if we had the Super League on the women's side interplaying with the W League, the top amateur division? There's all kinds of considerations, but there's a lot of things about it we like, and there's a lot of things I think that are enchanting to fans. It reminds me a lot of college sports here, where you can have a small college or university in a relatively small town compete with the University of Texas, right? And their $250 million a year annual budget for college amateur athletics, right?
Right. So, Court, I'm sure that you get people approaching you and asking for advice all the time via LinkedIn or whatever. So, especially people starting their sports career now, is there one sort of particular advice that you normally give them?
Yeah, I think again, I'll go back. Be curious. Engage in forums like this. Engage in I Work in Sports, and don't rule anything out. Again, I would have never, in my wildest dreams, thought I would work in rugby for 4 years. You may never think you'll work in amateur athletics. You may never think you'll work in motorsports. But if it's the right position and the right situation, you can really round out your career. So be open-minded, and you might learn something. I think often we all, look at the NFL, look at FIFA, look at the NBA, these giant organizations globally, the IOC. But usually you're a little bit smaller of a spoke in the wheel of a very big organization versus a smaller, more niche one. You get a lot thrown at you, which can be good when you're young.
Yeah, 100%. This is very similar to, I think, the advice that I normally give. I work obviously with a lot of young sort of people entering sports, especially with the FIFA Master, which I work with. I normally meet every class, and it's funny because when you ask them the class, so what is it that you'd like to do once you graduate? The large majority of people, first, they won't tell you what, if it's marketing, if it's operations, if it's commercial. It's basically where, and they will tell you it's a FIFA way for the IOC, like 90%. And then what I tell them is very much what you said. If you actually keep your sort of eyes open for other opportunities, it could be really, really rewarding. You mentioned, I work in sports. For me, it's a pleasure to say that the USL have participated in our latest last year and this year virtual job fair. So I want to give a shout out to Rachel and to Kali, who were at the booth there, and at least their feedback was positive. But I wanted to, from your perspective, from USL's perspective, how was that for you?
Look, we need to get our name out there, and not just in fan-facing channels, but channels like this, hubs where people go to learn about jobs in sports, careers, opportunities, you name it. We have to work the business-to-business channels twice as hard as we got to work the fan ones, because we need really good people. And so, I appreciate this platform and the chance to connect our head of people and our director of HR with it. We're rapidly growing, and an organization has to have really good people. So sometimes USL isn't as sexy as MLS or NBA, just like you said, IOC, UEFA. So once they look under the hood a little bit, you're like, wow, this is cool. Entrepreneurial, startup mentality. We make shit up all the time, right? We're figuring stuff out. We're figuring out new competitions, ways to innovate. We're going to try some stuff that fails. We don't have to be stuck in a certain way. So it's important that we not only look in Tampa or Florida or the US for talent, but we engage places like I Work in Sport to find the best talent globally and appropriately.
Great stuff. Great collaborating with you guys. Court, we're almost at the end. I know that you have a meeting sort of shortly, so I'll try to keep that to the hour. Very quickly, do you have the biggest sort of challenge that you had to overcome in your career that you thought was maybe the most difficult one, and what did you do?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the greatest challenge is probably a personal one, was when we got to the point of building with my partners and ultimately selling Nashville SC. That came with a job change. And it, I can't, necessarily say, it probably feels like, having to let your child go out of the nest and watch them walk away. So you build the club, it changes leadership direction. They brought in a new CEO, got an Ian Ayre from Liverpool, who's fantastic and really good for the club. But personally, that was hard, Joe. It was hard to watch something that you had poured so much into, hired almost 40 front office people, and recruited 30-odd players, and then one day you just walk away, and you check their box score like everyone else. You check to see if they made the playoffs. One, I'm happy to say our general manager and coach that I hired are still there, and they're thriving in MLS. Made the playoffs actually all 5 years of Nashville SC's existence. They made the playoffs. So we did something right. In the North American context, the playoffs are very important. So that was it. That was a hard one personally.
No, that's very cool. Would you say that's leaving the club and where they are now and building it was also your greatest achievements professionally?
I think so, like from a public facing standpoint. But I have to say that professionally, the other thing I really love is when people that I've worked with that I don't know where they are or where they've gone, kind of look me up and say, hey, I'm in New York. Let's grab a beer, let's grab a coffee, whatever. And they tell me what they're doing at that point, whether I worked with them for 3 months, 3 years, or whatever. I love continuing to stay close to that network and those people and see their successes. And one day I'm going to have to go to those people for a job as well. So I try to keep my irons hot on a lot of fronts.
Good stuff. Good stuff. There is a question here from, where was that? 1 second. Oh yeah, Jesus in Rennes, France. Say, Court, favorite sporting moment?
I've got a lot of them, but I have to say I was in Brazil for the opening game, U.S. versus Ghana, and when Clint Dempsey scored 30 seconds into the game, myself, the U.S. soccer delegation, everyone, we went nuts. I'll never forget that. We had just taken our seats, and we're like, here it is, boom. So that was a very, very cool moment.
Cool. Good to know. So, Jesus, there you go. Listen, Court, as I said, I want to let you go on the dot. One more question. I normally ask that to all of my guests. Would you like to recommend a book to our audience, or a podcast or YouTube channel, whatever you think that's well, you already mentioned a newsletter, right? Front office sport newsletter, but maybe something else then?
Yeah, I would say, look, we have a very global audience here. Alvaro, what's up, buddy? Anything, he's an English writer. He's an American, I think English born, but there's a travel writer named Bill Bryson, absolutely hilarious at poking fun at his own travels, his own American naivete when he travels abroad, different cultures, does it in a very cool way that will have you laugh out loud. So look up Bill Bryson's stuff. His first book, I think, was Neither Here Nor There, Travels in Europe, something like that. It's pretty cool.
Brilliant. Court, thank you so much. I will let you go as I promised, but I hope that we can sort of catch up off the air sometime and talk a little bit more. I want to say just thank you to everyone that is watching. As you said, Alvaro Lorente just left a message. Who else came back in? Malu Frigerio, my aunt, godmother, passed by to say hi. Hello. Travis just left and said hi too. So thanks, everyone. We'll be back next week. And yeah, thank you, Court. I'll be seeing you soon, man.
Thanks, Zhao. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I appreciate your time and questions. Be well.
You too. Just hold there 1 second. Okay, he's gone. Bye-bye, everyone. Ciao. See you next time.